Welcome Trinidad and Tobago to our News 4 report, a product of the Government Information Services Limited and the Ministry of Communications. I'm Nicola Barito. Let's take a look at the headlines. Government strengthens efforts to combat corruption in Trinidad and Tobago. This country is expected to play a pivotal role in this year's United Nations General Assembly. And the Prime Minister prepares to speak during Wednesday's debate on the Defence Amendment Bill. Thank you for joining us. Combating corruption in Trinidad and Tobago is of immense importance to the government. This is why the current administration intends to strengthen its efforts towards that effect in light of increasing improvements in this country's position on the corruption index.
The government accepts its responsibility when it comes to combating corruption through legislation and assures that it will maintain this accountability. The statements came at the AntiCorruption Conference 2013, which was held by the Trinidad and Tobago Transparency Institute at the Hyatt Regency. The theme of this year's conference, Regulating Against Opportunities for Corruption, saw discussions surrounding issues of reining in corrupt practices in sport, business, the protective services, and in political party funding. International anti-corruption experts joined their local counterparts along with presenters from Panama, the UK, Canada, and Jamaica. Delivering the feature address on behalf of Prime Minister the Honourable Kamla Persad-Bissessor, Acting Prime Minister the Honourable Errol MacLeod says the Integrity in Public Life Act needs to be reviewed and reformed for the benefit of the Integrity Commission,
so that the Commission is better equipped and positioned to more effectively fulfill its important national objectives. We accept that the Act needs to be strengthened if its purpose is to effectively combat corruption. One particular area, in my view, on which we must place attention is the question of failure to make the statutory declarations by persons so deemed under the Act.
The review is a priority of the current administration, and the Honourable Acting Prime Minister reaffirmed the importance of proper procurement legislation to the government.
The guiding principles, legislation is actively being drafted by the Chief Parliamentary Council Unit of the Office of the Attorney General, as well as the Ministry of Planning and Sustainable Development. I anticipate that within a very short period, a draft bill will be available for initial review. Indeed, our Minister of Planning assures us that this bill should be before Parliament by April of this year.
He says the intent is to have a bill that is robust and comprehensive, which will see the input of transparency institutes and major civil organizations in its finalization. Nicola Edwards, News 4.
This country is expected to play a pivotal role in this year's United Nations General Assembly as it puts forward its views on 2013's focus on global economic governance. Visiting Trinidad and Tobago ahead of this is Vuk Hermich, President of the United Nations General Assembly. Foreign Affairs Minister the Honourable Winston Dukaran met with His Excellency.
Trinidad and Tobago's voice will play a critical part in the upcoming UN General Assembly Global Economic Governance debate on April 15th. And visiting these shores ahead of the gathering is Vuk Hermich, President of the United Nations General Assembly. Welcoming His Excellency Foreign Affairs Minister Winston Dukaran says this country will once again play an important role in the debate, this time in shaping the world's economy.
The President has developed a very ambitious program for the future and have solicited our support and advice on the program for the next few months in the session of the General Assembly. One of which that comes to mind very quickly to me, because I myself have had a deep interest in this matter, has been the global governance and financial affairs. And he invited us to participate fully in a new initiative that he is proposing in April to discuss global governance and financing affairs. Trinidad and Tobago has been taking a very strong position on this issue, both in the World Bank and the IMF, and in the G24.
Last year, Trinidad and Tobago was responsible for presenting CARICOM initiative on the Small Arms Trade Treaty in its response to global organized crime. Vuk Haramich, president of the United Nations General Assembly, says it's voices from small island states such as Trinidad and Tobago that matter on the global front.
It is very important for us to hear what is the view of small countries, because they're the majority in the UN. I come from a small country, so maybe there is a bias personally, but also institutionally, as a president of the General Assembly, where CARICOM is playing a visible role. I came to the Caribbean to hear from the member states, and I chose Trinidad and Tobago because of its prominence within the Caribbean family.
And while this country looks to the General Assembly later this year, Minister Dukran says issues on the front burner seek to ensure that economic buffers are put in place to protect economies within CARICOM, as well as provide secure, accessible markets for members of the private sector.
Issues before the international community is to find a new treatment for that issue, the details of which we have outlined as well, in terms of developing buffers that could create higher levels of resilience for Caribbean economies. In the post-2015 arena, we must not search for solutions that require only commitment of the public sector, but must have market-based solutions to ensure the sustainability of the measures. Our position in broad is that the measures of sustainability must themselves become sustainable in the long term, and therefore we are at a point that we can influence the agenda which we are trying to do.
The General Assembly is the main decision-making organ of the United Nations, which comprises of 194 member states. It is the duty of the President of the Assembly to participate in the negotiations and preside over all meetings. Kimberly Ramkalawan, News 4.
After the break, religion and community building activities key to solving the nation's crime affliction. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. A return to religion and community building activities is one key to solving the nation's crime affliction. This is the view being expressed by the Member of Parliament for Couva North and Minister in the Ministry of the Environment and Water Resources, the Honourable Ramona Ramdial.
Ms. Ramdial expressed this view as she toured Hindu temples in her constituency during the Hindu religious festival of Shivratri. Speaking in an exclusive interview with News 4, Ms. Ramdial says the government has embarked on a number of physical and legislative initiatives to reduce the crime level.
We have some pressing social challenges that we need to deal with, one of that being of crime and the other one being that of our youth. With respect to, of course, crime on youth and employment on youth. And therefore, I want to urge all communities, and I will do so tonight through the temples, that crime is everybody's business. As you know, the government is proceeding to lay important pieces of legislation with respect to fighting crime. And of course, on Wednesday, we will continue the debate with respect to precepting the soldiers with the policemen in order for powers of arrest, in order to give them powers of arrest. And therefore, these are some of the crime-fighting strategies that the government has embarked upon.
Minister Ramdial adds that while the government does its part, communities must also come together to collectively play a role in the crime issue.
It takes a community to raise a child, and we want to inculcate that sort of behavior. I know many years ago, when I was a young child, a young girl growing up, our communities took care of us, and therefore everybody is so busy today, but we really need to get back to religion and get back to our morals and values through communities, and it's only through community building activities that we can really bring back our young people on the right path.
Addressing the devotees at the Couva Mandir, Minister Ramdial says street crime and murders aren't the only crimes being addressed. She insists the government has also taken note of another serious type of crime occurring in this country.
Our Prime Minister has mandated the Ministry of Gender, Youth and Child Development to look over the legislation that protect our women against domestic violence. So we are looking at our domestic violence legislation and how we can strengthen it to protect our young girls and our women, because it's also an increasing and a pressing social ill that we have to deal with in society here.
The Couva North MP believes another important aspect to reducing crime is a greater emphasis on education. This, she believes, can be a way out of poverty and a life of crime, as a greater number of opportunities will be made available to anyone who takes their education seriously.
Education, as you know, is most important with respect to our young ones, and we want to encourage that our young children, boys and girls, and to ensure that our parents see it fit to have our young ones go through the system, our education system in Trinidad and Tobago. And as much as we may have challenges, at the end of the day, we are very fortunate here in Trinidad and Tobago to have free education up to the tertiary level. And therefore, this is something that our young ones must always monopolize on and take advantage of. So the opportunity for education exists.
This is the third consecutive year that the Couva North MP and her executive committee have toured the temples in the area on the night of Shivratri. To all who celebrated the festival over the weekend, on behalf of News 4, Shuk Shivratri. Gregory McBurney, News 4.
In other news, the Prime Minister is prepared to speak during Wednesday's debate on the Defence Amendment Bill, which is expected to be a significant blow to the criminal elements in this country.
On Wednesday, the debate on the Defence Amendment Bill, which seeks to give the soldiers powers of arrest, will continue in the House of Representatives. Debate on the bill began in the Parliament on Friday. Prime Minister, the Honourable Kamla Persad-Bissessar, was unable to sit in during the debate as she was in Venezuela, where she attended the funeral of President Hugo Chavez. Addressing members of her constituency, the Honourable Prime Minister commented on the national topic, fully supporting her government's approach to tackling the issue of crime.
I was not here on Friday in the Parliament, but I understand the debate was very heated. We are minded to take some of those points on board that were raised in the debate, and let us see if we can arrive at consensus. Because we have 5,000 soldiers. Why can't we use some of them in the fight against crime? What is wrong with that? At the moment, SRPs are precepted. So why not soldiers? They are trained. They say they are trained to be killing machines. That is not true. Soldiers have always had the power under the Defence Act to work alongside police. But what they did not have was the protection that the police have. The powers and the protection and the privileges that you, when you're operated as a policeman, that you have. But the soldiers did not have it. And that's what all we are trying to do. To do what? To bring more personnel, more officers in the fight against the criminals.
The Honourable Prime Minister addressed several public concerns, which she says her government is ready to put systems in place to deal with.
Yes, there are concerns about checks and balances. We can look at that too. We intend to amend the Police Complaints Act so that we can allow the Police Complaints Authority, in the same way when a complaint is made about a police officer, you can get redress and a remedy there. We intend to amend that to allow soldiers who work alongside police when acting with police powers and functions, that they too can be dealt with by the Police Complaints Authority. So we put a check and balance. The other concerns that the soldiers are under the Minister of National Security, whoever he or she may be, whichever one, concerns, yes, we can deal with that too. We can make that reporting function to the Defence Council, which is a body of persons, rather report to one person. So there are ways that we can make this happen. And it is not, the reason we are doing it is not because we are angry people or spite or malice or ill will. It is because of our determination to bring more people, more persons, more officers in the fight against crime.
The Honourable Prime Minister will speak during Wednesday's debate and assures that she will be mindful of the contributions and concerns of others so that consensus can be achieved. She made the point that things cannot be expected to improve if the same methods are employed. Nikolai Edwards, News 4.
When we come back, athletes shine at the Trinidad and Tobago Relay Carnival. Stay with us. Young Trinidad and Tobago athletes got a chance to shine on the weekend as the Trinidad and Tobago Relay Carnival ran off at the Hazley Crawford Stadium. The Junior Invitational Meet also saw athletes from North America and the Caribbean participating.
The top junior athletes from the US, Canada, Bahamas, Jamaica, Antigua and Trinidad and Tobago took to the track for the first ever Trinidad and Tobago Relay Carnival Games. The event was inspired by the world-famous pen relays, which are hosted by the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia every year. The best performing teams at the Trinidad Relay Carnival will be rewarded with funding to attend the pen relay games this year. Toko Secondary School were the first team to stand atop the podium as they won the opening event, the High School Girls B Sprint Medley, in a time of 4 minutes 29.59 seconds, beating El Dorado West Secondary into second place with a time of 4 minutes 48.13 seconds. Toko then went on to take top spot again in the Girls 4x100 Girls B category with a time of 51.88 seconds, Holy Name Secondary coming in a little over half a second behind at 52.24 seconds, and El Dorado West finishing third in 53.94 seconds. It wasn't long though before the foreigners signaled their intent to pose a serious challenge, with Team USA 2 races in taking a commanding lead in the high school boys 200 by 200 by 400 by 800 medley race. The Americans running an impressive 3 minutes 46.36 seconds, pushing Mayaro Secondary into second place with a 3 minutes 50.66 second run, and Toko Secondary resorting themselves to third with a time of 3 minutes 54.39 seconds. The foreigners continue to show off themselves with a good performance in the high school girls A category, this time the Canadians putting their best foot forward. The team, anchored by Mariam Abdul Rashid, clocked 4 minutes 24.27 seconds, crossing the line more than a minute ahead of Mayaro Secondary, whose time of 5 minutes 34.63 seconds gave them the second place. And it was the Canadians again, this time the boys, to repeat the feat in the boys' high school medley A race. The Canadians getting some stiffer competition this time around, but still managing the win, finishing in a time of 3 minutes 28.04 seconds. The Antiguans managing their first medal of the games with a second place time of 3 minutes 34.08 seconds, and Toko Secondary's 3 minutes 34.98 seconds earned them a third place finish. And while the young ones got their chance to shine, it was the men's invitational 4x100 meter relay race that stole the show. Trinidad and Tobago's Zwade Hewitt and 2004 Olympic Games men's 400 meter champion Jeremy Warriner teamed up with Americans Woodrow Randall and Marcus Boyd to form an elite quartet team. They ran off against Jamaica and the Bahamas in the 4x1 relay. Randall kicked out of the blocks for the elite quartet. He handed the baton to Boyd. Warriner took it around the curve for the third leg, and TNT's Hewitt running anchor and bringing home the win. Speaking to the media after the win, Hewitt says his injury has slowed down his progress a bit, but he is confident he will be fit to represent this country at the World Championships.
I started a little bit late because I had an injury last year, stretch fracture, so I've been taking my time a little bit, and that's the good thing about not being in school. I can take my time and do what I have to do and focus on myself and make sure I'm 100% before I start back racing and everything. So right now, it's just to progress and aim for the championships later this year.
Hewitt says his training with former Olympic champion Warriner is paying great dividends.
Now, we do more, I train more with him specifically and not with the team, because now that I'm out of school and a party team, so I train with him now per se. So it's a big motivator because I know what he has done, and knowing what he has done, that could help me get to that level, you know.
Hewitt says he's hoping to consistently clock sub 45-second times to ensure he can earn a spot on the podium at the World Championships. Gregory McBurney, News Sports 4.
News 4 continues after the break. Stay with us. Breaking the cycle of violence against children starts with being proactive and a responsible nation of adults. The view expressed by Chief Justice Ivor Archie as he addressed a conference on the issue hosted by the Coalition Against Domestic Violence and the Rape Crisis Society.
Moving away from violence against children starts with moving away from being reactionary when an incident occurs. just one of the many issues raised by Chief Justice Ivor Archie in opening the two-day Violence Against Children conference hosted by the Coalition Against Domestic Violence and Rape Crisis Society. The CJ expressed concern over the alarming increase of violence in Trinidad and Tobago, especially among children. He holds this responsible for the lack of development among youth, which has resulted in our society today.
Every boy and every girl, as indeed any human being, must have their rights completely respected so that they may develop with dignity. And any form of violence can only undermine their development. We cannot wait to see violence occurring before we act. And there have been many successful initiatives that have showed that much violence is absolutely preventable.
According to the World Health Organization analysis, violence against children often occurs in the first decade of life, posing both a problem in itself and a major risk factor to victims becoming violent themselves later on in life. But Chief Justice Ivor Archie said treating issues of violence against children should be done in a sensitive manner, and noted key to this was the retooling of skills among judicial staff and social workers when handling such cases.
That concept of full access to justice I have come to regard as a separate and discrete fundamental right, which is expressly protected in the judiciary's vision statement. And it is inextricably linked to the court's ability to provide tailored support systems for children who have to testify. All the players, advocate, judge, and magistrate, must be retooled with skills for the successful conduct of child examination. Children should not be openly accused of lying, as this could upset a young witness and likely impair his or her ability to give sound testimony. In addition, questions should not be repeatedly put to a child, as he or she is likely to be persuaded into thinking that the first answer was unacceptable, and to change the response to please the advocate, who is an adult and an authority figure. Child perpetrators are arguably the end result of a dysfunction or failure in the social and family system, because what we do to children, they will do to society.
The CJ added that early interventions must be made if curbing this issue is to happen.
Adjudicators must be given a range of criminal sentencing options, some of the existing ones are archaic, and there is no point in things like whipping and prolonged incarceration. Traditional sentences may sometimes work for the adult offender, but keeping children in criminogenic conditions only increases the likelihood of recidivism.
Under the Children's Authority Act, provisions are made for their care and protection in cases of abuse and neglect. Kimberly Ramkalawan, News 4.
And that's how we wrap up this edition of our News 4 report, a product of the Government Information Services Limited and the Ministry of Communications. I'm Nicola Barreto. Thank you for joining us.